I knew I wanted to coach after a while. I tried the medicine thing, the doctor thing, medical school for a while. I enjoyed that, but I liked coaching more. We ended up coaching, and I'm glad I did. I got to meet all these kids, hundreds of them, and there's a story behind every one of them. Mostly success. Once in a while, we lose one, but very, very rare. And this guy came over. I didn't know him, but he knew who I was. Two of his kids worked for him, worked out here. He said, "I'm going to bring some stuff and dump it off on your in your driveway." So I came home from Ames one day, and there's a pile of plywood and 2x4s and all kinds of stuff. And so I said, well, I'm going to need somebody to figure out how to do this addition. He came over, he sent one of his guys over who was a carpenter. He put rafters in and the whole deal, and then insulated it. Still had some more kids that wanted to work out. I called that same guy and I said, can I build an addition to the existing garage? And he said, yeah, I think so. Let me come over and take a look. He said, well, we're going to build something over here on the side. You better tell your neighbors. So he said, I'll send a guy over here. Got the gym kids together, and I said, hey, we're going to build another addition. So we did. So it's been built on 2 or 3 times. And then we had a heat problem, obviously. We had another guy that I knew in Fort Collins. And I said, what's the deal with your heating company? He said, well, you can put a garage furnace in there. He said, we do that all the time. Yeah, he said, we got to run a gas line and whatever. And I said, I'm not touching the gas line. He said, no, I'll take care of it. So all this has been contributed by guys that were either parents of athletes or, they knew what Team Taylor was. Sam Mastari, who was the sports guy, his son, who was a state champion, worked out here. Tony Mastari was 3 times state wrestling champion. So we got some nice stuff, nice articles in the paper. I got too many phone calls. Well, I want my kid to come over there and work out. And I'm going on. I said, we already got about 15 or 20 kids. I said, we're bumping into each other. These guys have all been in here. Some of them for 3 or 4 years. Justin Gonzalez, state champion. So this is the gallery of superstars. Bodybuilders. I coached for a while at Colorado State because I had 3 of my Illinois guys played for them. John Ivalo, who was there, was all conference, all everything. He was all American at the end. Everybody told me, you got to go see Ernie. So I went to Aurora, and he said, yeah. He says, if you want to play football, you got to be a power lifter. So we started this whole powerlifting thing in a garage, and it was cold, very cold in the winter, and there was no furnace, but we went every day after school. Then we snuck some weights into the school. The school had no weight room. There was a equipment room way in the back in the basement. And I asked one of the coaches, can we bring some weights in there? He says, well, I don't know. What do you want them weights in there for? I thought weightlifting would make you slower and muscle bound. Of course, I learned later when I went to school and took classes, there is no such thing as muscle bound. We brought some weights in. This one kid was a welder, so we go to the junkyard and make weights. We made some benches and we had flywheels for weights. Flywheels didn't weigh the same, but we used those as our weights at first. It was kind of crude, but it worked. And for Christmas, I got a weight set. My dad didn't tell me. He said, I think Santa left you something. I'm going, what do you mean on the front porch? Well, it turned out the guy that would deliver the weights, it was too heavy. They just left it on the front porch. He said, that's enough. We're not taking it in house. Burr Barbell Company, it doesn't exist anymore. That was the first weight set. You had to order it from the last page in comic books back then. Was Charles Atlas ad, and Charles Atlas was a big money or big bill guy. He's endorsed, Burr bodybuilding, and he had to send for his program, which was $25. So I told my dad, "Will you give me a check for like $25 to the Charles Atlas thing?" And he said, "Yeah. We'll do that." And so it came in the mail one day. And it was funny because the mailman was walking up the sidewalk to our house. He used to go, "Denny, did you order this thing?" And I said, "Yeah." I said, "I want to be a good football player and all that." And he said, "Well, this should do it." He said, "I leafed through it a little bit." He said, "You can teach me when you learn how to do it yourself." I said, "Okay." So, but the mailman never came back, so I don't know. But all this stuff came from Illinois. We made a lot of this stuff, welded it. Some of my football players from the junior college where I coached, so they welded all this stuff. Made it out of junk metal that we got out of the junkyard, a lot of it. The junkyard guy, he laughed every time we showed up with the pickup truck. He said, "What, are you going to pick up some more of my junk?" I said, "Yeah, but it won't be junk very long." I said, "Well, come and look at it after we get done making all this stuff." Never did come, but so this is all, some of it is stuff we ordered, some of it is like the leg machine is handmade. We made that, and it turned out pretty good. And we made these squat racks. Some of it is bought from the companies and collected. And once in a while, somebody dropped by and said, "Coach, I got this stuff in my garage. Why don't you come and see if you can use it?" There was a guy down here a couple blocks away that had some barbells and dumbbells and all kinds of stuff. I said, "Are you going to use that?" And he said, "No." He said, "That was my kid. He's gone. He's married, whatever." I said, "Well, how much you want for it?" He said, "It's free. Take it." College education nowadays is very costly. We got full scholarships for all those guys. Probably close to almost 50 guys. I had parents call me and say, "Hey, you sent my kid to college." I said, "Yeah, that was part of the deal." I worked in the gym at Colorado State for a while. 3 of my Illinois guys played football there. John Ivalo, Pat Meyer. Pat Meyer now is professional football coach for the Carolina Panthers and has done very well. He makes good money, and he built a house up in the mountains. It's got a indoor swimming pool. He called me one day and he said, "You gonna come up and see my house?" I said, "Yeah." He said, "Well, bring your swimming trunks." "Why?" He said, "Just bring your swimming trunks." So I did, and he showed me the first thing I thought was this like a 3-lane swimming pool, long, narrow. But he was one of my guys in college, football player, and he became obviously a pretty good football coach. John Ivalo is the most winning football coach in Illinois high school. The state trooper during the day, and then he coaches at the high school. He was a full scholarship athlete at Colorado State, fullback. And there's Eddie Cohn, he's a world champion powerlifter. There's Ernie Franz is my coach. Did you ever see the movie Rudy? That's his brother. This lady right here is this guy's wife, and she was world champion, ladies powerlifter. And I said, did your husband make you do this? And she said, "Well, at first I didn't want to do it." He said, "But now I'm world champion, so obviously it turned out pretty good. This guy's from the Chicago Bears, Denny Taylor. He played for the Bears. That guy there is a professional wrestling champion, and he wrestled that guy in the that guy was one of the Bruiser brothers. There's two guys that were supposed to be twins. I don't think they really were, but he was one of the Bruiser brothers, and we met him before one of his wrestling matches. And I was in a bodybuilding contest. I won 3 or 4 bodybuilding contests. And there's Justin up there. When he was in high school. We've had baseball players, football players. We've had some good, hard-working kids. And these guys, Chicago Bears, Syracuse University, pro baseball players. We've had, I think, 5 pro baseball players over the years. And these guys have made really good money, and they used to send me nice Christmas presents. He came in my gym in Illinois and came in with his mother. He was in a wheelchair. And I'm going, I think you're in the wrong place. I said, there's a doctor that was down the block. And she said no. He explained the problem. Dale Bronk was his name. And she said, my son was in a farm accident and they broke his spine. She said, can he work out here? I said, I have background in physical therapy, but I've never had people who were in a wheelchair. She said, we can't go anywhere else because they won't take them. And so, she gave me this story, and I said, well, I'll tell you what. She kind of got to me, and I said, bring him in tomorrow, and we'll see what, limitations he has. And so he could do some upper body stuff, but he had to stay in the wheelchair. No lower body stuff. He was with me for 3 years. He learned how to walk, which was amazing. So they did a big article in the paper about him, how he went from his wheelchair to ability to walk. He was late to practice one day, and I'm going like, well, I better call and find out. Turned out the bus driver left him off a block away from the gym. He didn't know. So he walked with his crutches all the way over. And one of the athletes came in at my office, and he said, Dale is out in the middle of the cornfield. I said, what? He said, Coach, honest to God, he's out in the middle of the cornfield with his crutches. And I went out, and sure enough, he's in this cornfield next to the gym. And I'm running out there, and I'm going like, what are you doing out here? He said the bus driver dropped me off in the wrong place. But he made it all the way through the cornfield. That's my son, Todd. He was a powerlifting champion. Now he's a firefighter in Chicago. He's captain of the firefighter building and so forth. So he turned out pretty good. And we got national titles and college degrees, 4 college degrees. So we have 2 master's degrees and bachelor's degree in pre-med. I was going to be a doctor. That was the first college I went to. North Central College was in Naperville, Illinois. And I was in pre-med because I wanted to be a doctor, because one of my heroes was my personal physician, football player in, I think, Wisconsin University. I want to be a doctor like you. He said, you know how hard it is? I said, do you think I'm smart enough? He said, well, there's only one way you find out. So I enlisted in all these courses, the pre-med courses, and did pretty good. but I liked coaching better, so I ended up coaching instead of being a doctor. But I did autopsies for a while. I don't think I want to do autopsies the rest of my life. It was kind of scary. I learned all about anatomy, and I learned all about what people do to destroy their health. Like some of these people had been alcoholics. They died of cirrhosis, liver cancer, and stuff like that, because we had a file on he would give me the file. A lot of the times I had to go at night because I had college all day. He'd call me and he said, "You got to come in tonight. We got to do this autopsy." And I got pretty good at it, and he let me do it all by myself. But I'd bring him samples, and he'd take those to the chem lab next door and do all the testing and so forth. And I say, "So what was going on with that guy, Doc?" And he said he had cirrhosis of the liver. He was a severe alcoholic. He said, "Think about it. Next time you drink a beer," I'm going, I don't want cirrhosis of the liver or whatever. But we had some interesting autopsies, and I learned a lot. And so I thought I was going to become a pathologist, just what he was. Pathologist deals with diseases that kill people and so forth, and why they have to come up with a report after they do the autopsy, why the person died. This guy was like really good at it. He was from Germany, and I said, "Well, how long have you been in the United States?" And he said, "I've been here 10 years. He said, "Germany that's when Hitler took power, when he was first a doctor." He said, "I had to get out of there." He said, "We knew Hitler was, going to lead us into war." And he said, a year after I left, he said, we went to war with America and with everybody else. He said, "United States is the best thing that ever happened in the history of history, I guess." We used to have as many as 15 kids in here at one time. Have your workout, we had a workout book for every kid, like that black and white one. They came in, they had to take their workout out of there and do it for the day. Like Mondays, they do certain body parts. So by the end of the week or two, we'd sit down. I said, "Well, bring your book. Let me see what you're doing." And we'd test. Everything was supposed to be in a cycle. The cycle was you improve the weight a little bit at a time. And the cycle we had 9-week cycles. And so for 9 weeks, you're supposed to be able to make a small progress. And at the end, we used to test before, and then we'd test afterwards. And some of these kids were amazing. Depending on work ethic, some people, the whole deal from the gym, that some kids have work ethic. They'll do whatever you tell them to do because they want to be better athletes. And other kids, they never make it. I had to. And that was hard. You'd have to tell some kids once in a while, like, "Hey, you're wasting your time. You're supposed to come in here 5 days a week." I said, "You're lucky if you make it 2 days a week." I said, "Why don't you go back to the high school gym and you work out there?" "Well, I like this." "Yeah, I know you like it. It's called the program. And you have to follow the program. If you don't follow the program, you're just wasting time. It's wasting my time. It's wasting your time." I said, "That would leave more room for somebody who has work ethic." And I'd have to explain what work ethic is. That means you're going to work out every day, and you're going to get sore, and you're going to come in the next day, and you're going to walk funny. And I'm going, "Are you okay?" He says, "Yeah, Coach, I had a really good workout." I said, "Yeah, that's what it's all about." I said, you got to keep it within bounds. That's why we have the written cycle, and so you don't go crazy. Then we got to the point where we put on some powerlifting meets, and we did that for 2 or 3 years. We did a couple at Northridge, and then We did a couple downtown in a gym that's no longer there. But Greeley has had 3 or 4 gyms downtown that never made it because they weren't teaching gyms. They were just, they want your money and they say, here's the equipment, good luck. There's no program, there's nothing. You have to hire an instructor, and sometimes the instructors aren't very good. I'm going like, where did you get your education? Oh, well, my buddy showed me how to do it. Buddy was doing it wrong, okay? We had Dirk Johnson, just number 8, Philadelphia, and then he played for Denver. His specialty was punting. He could punt. He was rated at the end of the professional season. They have kind of a rating system, like who was the best pass receiver, who was the best quarterback, so forth. And he, for 2 or 3 years, he was the best punter. And his punts, I went to a couple of the games. He got me tickets or whatever with the Broncos, and because the Broncos used to work out here at the college, and then they built their own facility. And I used to go down there and talk to the coaches. He could kick 50, 60 yards easy. So he got the reputation of, some of the games, and they'd tell the guys that are, punt receivers, they call it, get back. It's going to go way over there. So he did really well. And then finally he got hurt, and a guy did an illegal. You're not allowed to, the punter, you're not allowed to tackle him or run into him. You can block the ball. Some guy went through the ball, put his helmet into him, and that kind of messed him up for a long time. And I think eventually he played for 1 more year, but he didn't, something was wrong. And there's my hero, Walter Payton, played for the Bears. Met him. I got to go because 2 of my guys played for the Bears. After the game was over, I got to go in the locker room. I told Tommy, I said, I want to see him. He said, okay. He said, so he took me over and introduced me and stuff. I'm going, you're the greatest football player I ever met. He said, well, I'm glad you think that way. It was a movie about Walter, and Brian Piccolo was in it. And the guys would say, don't go talk to him. Just leave him alone. He's in his own little world. He said, just let him stay there. So they left him alone. They wouldn't, and everybody else is going out for a warm-up, I guess. So he was going through the whole game in his mind, I guess, and what he was going to try to do and so forth. But I enjoyed meeting him. He was a really cool guy. And he was very nice. He was just, everybody bothers him and comes up for autographs or whatever. I was allowed in the locker room, so I went over and said hi, and he said, yeah. He said, I know who you are. He said, you're Tommy Thayer's coach. I said, man, you know who I am? That was cool. Walter died of cancer, and they still have the Walter Payton Award for the MVP of the season, which is quite an honor. Was that one of the things? They had one in Chicago, and because one of the Chicago Bears got that award. Tommy called me and he said, do you want to come to this banquet? And I said, yeah, sure. So they gave the Walter Payton Award to this guy, and Walter Payton's son gave the award. And he was, by that time, he was, in college or something. I mean, it almost made you cry. Walter's still alive. His son's here. You have to buy into what we call the program. You have to buy into the program. The program is basically a couple of different things. One is you have to get good grades in school. If you don't, we're not going to take you if you're a D and F student, because you're not going to make it anyway. You're not going anywhere. So that you have to bring me your report card and show me. I said there's no alcohol involved. And I always hear these stories. After the weekend's over, on Monday, I hear about who did what, and they say, Coach, about so-and-so, and they got drunk or whatever, and they were chasing these girls or whatever. So if you do that in your team, Taylor, you're out. You couldn't get in trouble. I said, you get trouble with the police, you're done forever. And I had one kid that got in a fight or someplace in a bar or whatever. I said, you don't do that. He said, because people know you're from this gym. I went to court for that young man. And I told the judge, I said, hey, this kid is a pretty good kid. He's working out and so forth. And so he said, and the judge said, yeah, I know who you are and what you do and so forth. And so he said, I'll tell you what, Coach, he said, I'll give this kid a break as an example. I said, but if anything happens again, I said, he's gonna go to jail. We had a really good relationship with a couple of judges when I was coaching at the college. We had some, they always have beer parties after every game. So I went to court probably a dozen times. And if the guy had real work ethic and he was really trying and his grades were pretty good, that's what I would tell the judge. I would say, hey, this kid's a college student. He's got a B average in school. He's got a good family, and he knows he screwed up. So we need a little leeway here. If he does it again, then do what you do best, Judge. So we had some legal issues with a few kids, but not very many, because they knew if they got in trouble, they're not going to come through that door anymore. There were probably 3 or 4 guys at least that I banned them from the gym. I said, you're not coming back. Well, my dad said, I said, I don't care what your dad said. Your dad doesn't say play football, does he? Well, yeah, but, I said I was sorry. Sorry, I'm going to cut it. This is the addition that we made. So there's been added on to twice because we had so many kids. We had a bunch of kids from Northridge and Central. Jason Hosmer was one of them. Jason played for UNC and he died of cancer. It was one of the hardest funerals I've ever gone to in my life. I've probably gone to 6 or 7 funerals of athletes, car wrecks, but Jason was a really good football player, and I couldn't understand why some people get cancer, but that's God's decision, not mine. Todd, he's a firefighter in Chicago, a couple of state champion bodybuilders. Was an All-American football player, that guy. John Ivalo, we talked about already. He's still coaching in Illinois. Bolingbrook High School got one of the best football teams in the history of Illinois. This kid is in the Army. There's kids in the Marines. 2 of these kids are in the Marines, both brothers. This guy jumped out of helicopters. He called me one day from Camp Lejeune, which is in North Carolina. And I said, so how's the training going? Because we got him in really good shape before he went to the military. And he said, Coach, he said, I got a medal for being the best, in the best shape of the whole platoon. I said, well, so what's going on now? What are you doing? He said, I parachuted out of a helicopter yesterday. I said, you did what? He went to the military, and he and his brother both. These guys were amateur champion boxers in Chicago, and they came here and worked out. And there's Tony Mastari, he's a national champion. Tony's a wrestling coach in Eaton High School. And this kid raised these huge cows. I forget what they call them, but he had championship trophies from raising those cows. He said, well, you got to come down and watch the rodeo. He said, there's a couple of rodeo guys that are going to ride one of my bulls. I'm going, what? He said, yeah. He said, I got a bull down there they use in a rodeo. So I went to the rodeo. That's the craziest thing I think I've ever seen anybody do, is try to ride a bull. And then, of course, the bull will throw him off, then the bull's going to go after the guy, and they got guys in the arena that are supposed to stop that and protect the guy. This guy was a national champion swimmer. This guy was on the cover of the Missouri magazine, was an All-American football player. And we've got trophies, and all of those are mine. People don't believe that. You got a trophy if you finished in the top 3. So that was my thing. Used to have the Fire Academy at Ames. So we trained those guys for 2 or 3 years. But we had firefighters, probably 6 or 8 firefighters that went through our program that are now firefighters. A couple of them are retired. Rick Cudworth, you know, but he was captain of the fire department for a long time. I taught him everything he knows. He said, no, not quite. She was really good. She was tough. She was as tough as any guy I ever had. Tough, great athlete. Got a full scholarship to college. She used to call me once in a while, going, Coach, you still alive? I said, yeah. My dad had been a really good athlete in high school, never went to college. He ended up in the military. I said, Dad, I'm going to go out for football. So he said, well, yeah, give it a try. You know, and I don't think he thought I was going to make it. So I went out, and I did not do well first couple. They have preseason before high school starts for a couple of weeks. And I thought I was going to die. Some of these guys were in shape. I mean, they used to, first thing you had to do was run around the track. Track was a quarter-mile track. I could barely make it around a quarter mile. And then I determined, okay, I'm gonna run home from practice. So I did that every night, and I started losing weight. Then I started getting these muscle magazines. Used to be able to buy those, and I'd read the muscle magazines, and go like, man, look at that guy. I can see his abs, and he's got big arms, and you know. So I sent for that weight set, mowed lawns that summer, so I paid for the weight set. Dad said, yeah, you can get it, but you have to pay for it. I said, that way you'll appreciate it. So I started lifting weights in the basement. Then we ended up in Ronnie Carlson's garage, 3 blocks away. And his dad was an auto repair guy and could weld. So he started making stuff for us. He made squat racks like that. Started to get muscles. And then one of the coaches got me a job on a garbage truck. He said, you got a summer job? And I said, no, I don't know, where to get one. He said, I'll get you one. So he called me the next day and he said, go to this place, and he told me where it was. I said, it's pitching garbage. But you ride on the back of their truck, and of course you have to get on and out the truck at every stop, and then you have to do the whole thing. Well, back then, they had a thing called GI cans. Well, GI cans are steel garbage cans. The thing weighed 50, 60 pounds with nothing in it. And you had to get it up, so high, waist high, and to get it in a truck. And I thought the first week or so I was going to die. I'm going, this job's going to kill me. And the driver, Elmer was his name. He was a really nice guy, big, large guy. And he said, Denny, he said, you're going to do the pitching. I'm going to do the driving. So most of the time they would switch off, the driver and the pitcher or whatever. So I had to pitch all day. I started getting muscles. I lost all the fat. Then the next football season was like, the coach kept saying, "What did you do all summer?" I said, "Why?" He said, "Man, you're in better shape than anybody on the team." I said, "Yeah." I said, "I was a garbage man." He said, "Next summer, I'm going to have all my guys pitch garbage, okay?" I said, "That's a pretty good idea." We got into powerlifting from this guy, Ernie Franz, head coach at the prison. Stateville Prison. Stateville Prison is one of the most famous prisons in the world. And he was the strength coach. So they let these guys, if they were honorary prisoners and they didn't cause any problems, he would let them on the prison powerlifting team. He told some of our athletes, he said, "Well, you guys come and compete against the convicts." So we did that probably 2 or 3 times. So we had the prison meets, and we worked out for that. So I kept getting better at powerlifting and won the state championship and then a world championship 7 times. Had the world's best powerlifting team, and he was our coach, Ernie. He passed away last year. But some of the guys that benefited from that, Denny Taylor played for the Bears. He was in our garage gym all summer. He took me to Las Vegas after the season. He called me one day and he says, "Hey, what are you doing this weekend?" And I said, "Nothing, why?" He said, "We're going to Las Vegas." I'm going, "We're going where?" He said, "We're going to Vegas." He said, "Because we won the Super Bowl." Everything was free. Free room and board, free meals. This guy came and he said, "Are you Denny Taylor's coach?" And I said, "Yeah." He said, "Well, I'll tell you what." He said, and some of these people in Vegas are really wealthy. They got money. And this guy came up and you could tell he had money just by looking at him. He said, "Well, they won a Super Bowl." And he said, "I won a little money on them." And I didn't say how much, but he gave me, he said, "Here." And he gave me a couple $100. Gamble that. He said, "You'll lose, but gamble it anyway." He said, "It's fun." He said, "I lost a couple $1,000 yesterday." They treated us really nice. But I never went back to Vegas because you just go there to lose money. We went to Las Vegas twice for the World Championships. And I won the first time and in the Masters division. And then the second time, we went the next year, and the German team showed up. I mean, it was like 6 guys from Germany. They came all the way over here to Vegas and for this meet. And there was a guy in my weight class, the 220 weight class, that, I mean, this guy looked, you can tell if you've been coaching very long, who's on steroids and who isn't. And this guy definitely was a roider. We call him a roider. And I went to the meet director and I said, "Hey, I'm not trying to cause any problems around it." I said, "But, are we going to drug test this time?" And he said, "Oh yeah, we have to drug test every time." They pick like 5 or 6 people to be drug tested because they can't afford to do them all. They didn't choose him. And I'm going like, this guy is in my weight class. You do 3 lifts, you do a deadlift and a squat and a bench press. And after 2 lifts, we were kind of tied, pretty close tied. The last lift is a deadlift. And that was kind of my worst lift. And so, I don't know what I pulled, 585 or something, a little over 600. And this guy hadn't even started yet. I'm going, "What's the deal?" He said, "Well, he's going to start at 750. I'm going, "What?" And I was hoping he'd fail. He wouldn't make it. He'd screw up the lift. He pulled it like it was nothing. And I'm going, "Okay, here's second place." I said, "Are we going to drug test that guy?" He said, Coach, we picked 6 guys by random, and he wasn't one of them. But he was a good guy. We talked later, and I said, I don't know what kind of drugs you're using. He said, shh, don't say it. Turns out that all the Germans were on some kind of steroid. He said, come see me sometime, and he gave me his address in Germany. He said, we'll work out together, and he said, then we'll go drink beer. I'm going, is that what your training thing is? Yeah, he said, we all work out, and then we all go drink beer. Maybe that's the secret of getting strong, I don't know. But I miss Walter. Walter was the best football player ever, and the nicest guy ever. I was strength coach at the high school that year that they played in the Super Bowl. And I asked Tommy Thayer, who played for the Bears, I said, I have my high school kids at Joliet Catholic have a dinner after the season's over. I said, do you think you could come and make a little talk or something? Because he was kind of local famous hero. He said, I'll call Walter Payton and have Walter Payton come. I said, Walter's not going to come to me. He said, you'd be surprised. And he called me a couple of days later, and he said, so what can we do for Walter? I said, what do you mean? He said, he's coming. I said, I don't know, but so I went and got a gift certificate from, I don't know where it was from, some sporting thing. I said, if he doesn't use it, he said he can give it to somebody. He came. He made a little speech, and he said, I'm going to act like I know you now. So he would come over, and he's, so everybody thought I was a big shot because I knew Walter. So he would do stuff for charity all the time. I told him I'm taking my weights back to Colorado, and they said, okay. I said, we'll help you. So they got me a truck, and we loaded all this stuff up. It was really heavy, and the tires were like, and the guy said, Coach, I don't know if we got a little overload here. He says, you can try it, but, and sure enough, I got all the way from Illinois, halfway into Nebraska, and had a flat tire. So I didn't know what to do. A state cop came by, and he said, can I help you? And I said, yeah. I said, I got to have somebody come out. I said, all this weight equipment, it goes to my gym kids. And he said, well, we'll get you there somehow. So he got on the radio or whatever, and so a guy came out and looked at it, and he said, well, I'll be back in a half hour. And so he brought me a tire, spare tire, and put it on there. And so we made it finally, but we spent about 4 or 5 hours trying to figure out how to get here. So we got here, and I called a couple of these kids, high school kids, and I said, I got a job for you. I said, we're going to unload weights. And then it was just a plain garage. So we redid the whole place a little bit at a time. But some of these kids worked in construction, so they knew how to build stuff a little bit. Most of the materials were given to us. Never charged them money. I've had a couple of fathers, donate or whatever you need. I said, no, I don't want your money. So every once in a while for Christmas, I'd get an envelope with nobody's name on it. It'd be a couple $100 in there. And it said for gym use only. UFC championship belt. They used to have championship down in Denver. They'd have these championship UFC things. He brought them to the gym, and I said, do I get to keep them? He says, Coach, you can have one of them. I said, yeah, but he said, no, just one. They call it a mantra. It's you versus you. You're going to have your best coaching in the world. You can have the best equipment. But it all boils down to you versus you. Attitude, hard work, all that good stuff. And some kids don't have it. And once in a while, somebody will pop up and you go man, I've had to kick kids out of the gym like, hey, you've been here for 2 hours. That's enough. We can do what we have to do in an hour or a little more than that. And then too much will hurt you in the long run. So you're not going to be a champion, right away. It takes time. But they come in here and they see all these guys, they're champions, and they want to overdo it. The ones that underdo it, you finally say, hey, you need to do work out at school, not here. I've had a couple of fathers come and they were very upset. Well, you told my kid he couldn't work out here. I said, I'll tell you what, when he becomes first or second string all-conference football player, he'd come back. Well, yeah, well, he might do that. And I'm going like, Dad, I don't think so. Ronnie Coleman, he's the biggest bodybuilder that's ever been a bodybuilder. Was at a gym in Chicago. And I went up there and worked out once or twice. And at one time I met him and I said, hey, is there any chance you could come down to Joliet, which is about an hour south? I said, you could come down and talk to my high school football team at the high school at Joliet Catholic. I said, they're state champions and they have a dinner afterwards, a banquet thing. Is there any way you could come and make a little speech or anything? He says, yeah, I can do that for you, Coach. And I'm going, wow, this is the greatest bodybuilder that ever lived. And I called his secretary and I said, Ronnie said he'd come. I said, how much do I have to pay him? Because I was thinking, maybe he gets big bucks for going to these things and making a speech or whatever. She said, I don't know, I'll talk to him. So she called me back about an hour later and said, Coach, he said, he's not going to charge you anything. I said, you got to be kidding me. He said, yeah, you work for the high school, right? And I said, yeah. I said, I'm the high school strength coach. She said, wow. Ronnie said he'd come down there. We have a guest speaker tonight, and Ronnie hadn't come in the building yet, or the room yet. And there was all the parents and whatever, and here he comes and he starts taking off his shirt, and everybody went like, holy moly. And he goes, boom. And everybody went, oh my God. Did people like him and Walter Payton. Walter acted like we were best friends. Kids, the football players say, you know Walter, he's your friend? And I said, well, we're sort of friends. I said, But he made it look like, we were good buddies and that he enjoyed being there. And very nice man. Some big people. And this guy is Sergio Oliva. He was Mr. Olympia. They would get endorsements for using products like protein powder and so forth. So they didn't have to work. They didn't have jobs. Workout was their job. So they'd work out in the gym, and then I got to talk to them stuff, and they'd say, we're gonna go to the beach. Want to go to the beach? It was funny because you go to the beach in California, and these guys all are huge guys, and they're all walking out to water, kind of wade in the beach or whatever. These people would go like, they would stop whatever they were doing and go like, hey, look at that guy, And so I enjoyed going with them. It was like, well, I'm just with them, okay? I'm not. They'd come back in that night and probably do some cardio or whatever. So we did 2 weeks of that, and it was fun. I got to meet the big boys. I thought this would be a pretty good lifestyle, First time, kind of ignorant. And so he came to Chicago for some kind of, they have called an expo, an exercise expo every year for 2 days in downtown Chicago and at this big auditorium where they sell equipment and everything. So he was there as guest speaker or something. And I said, well, I'm going to try again. I'm going to go up and just say hi and see what, it was the first time he was like busy. He didn't want to bother with you or whatever. And it was kind of cool because he said, I know you from somewhere. I'm going, yeah. I said, you came down to Joliet for a thing one time. He said, I remember, yeah. He said, so you doing all right? And we talked for a little while. And I wanted people to see me with him. One guy was a stranger. I said, hey, would you mind taking a picture with me and Arnold? I don't know how I'd get the picture, but he said, I'll take it. I said, give me your name and address. He said, I'll send it to you. So he sent me that picture. I'm going, I thought the guy would never do it. He was the meanest good-looking guy I've ever seen. He's got tattoos on his head. He's scary looking. I was afraid to go up and talk to him. But he was in Chicago for some kind of boxing thing. So I thought, what the heck? only got one shot. I'll never see him again. I pushed my hand out like I didn't know whether he'd shake my hand or not. He said, no. He said, come on over here. He said, give me a hug. And he shook my hand and he put his arm around me. He said, I hear you're a coach. And I said, yeah. I said, I boxed 2 years in the Golden Gloves. And he said, did you do any good? I said, yeah, I won once. I said, the other time I broke my hand. I was out. I was done. He said, I've broken a few things too. You can teach the physical stuff, but the mental stuff you have to develop yourself. Some kids never get it. Other ones, it was like, you have to calm them down and go like, hey, you've been in here for an hour. It's time to go. You're overdoing it. Well, I want to be good, coach. I want to be state champion wrestler. But I know that. But, you reach a certain point after an hour and a half of working out, you're doing more harm than you are doing good. So let's cut it down to an hour. Work as hard as you can for an hour. 5 days a week. Boom, you got it. It's done. Well, yeah, but I want to do this and I know what you want to do. Sometimes overtraining is worse than undertraining. So there's a lot of college educated people that came from Team Taylor. And I told them all, you go to college, you're going to make a lot of money and be famous. I said, and then you have to, come and give me some money, because I didn't charge you anything while you were here. And now you're going to become rich and famous. You're not going to forget about me, right? Oh, no, coach, I'll come back, see you, I'll come back. I said, well, at least take me out to dinner or something. Tell these kids, I ask them, well, what are you going to do? All this education, what's your purpose? I'm going, don't you have any ideas of what you want to be or people that you admire? Most kids don't have an idea. They don't know what they want to do. Try something. If you don't like it after a year or whatever, you try something else. But eventually find something you're really good at, so you can do the rest of your adult life and enjoy it, make enough money for your family, and be happy.